The 10,001st meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is non-proliferation. The agenda is adopted. I give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we are compelled to take the floor on the point of order because we see no legal or political or procedural reasons for any kind of steps in development of the European claims that the snapback mechanism needs to come in. And this includes the voting on the draft resolution which was tabled by the South Korean presidency. We have, on many an occasion and various fora, have provided an explanation that there are no rights to launch what exists under operative paragraph 11 in Resolution 2020-31, the mechanism there, that the European participants of JCPOA have no rights to do that. The UK, France, and Germany are themselves chronic violators of Security Council Resolution 2231 and of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, including through introducing illegal unilateral sanctions against Iran in a replacement of those which expired on the restrictions plan. These countries also grossly violated the procedure for the consideration of disputed situations we have under GCPOA. In particular, they did not launch, according to the procedure we have on the Vienna platform, the mechanism for the dispute settlements. And I would like to recall here that Resolution 2231 is an integral document and it does not allow for a discrepancy between that mechanism and the JCPOA, which has always been and remains its integral part. Attempts on the part of the European countries to present the situation as though they have the right to activate the punitive positions of the resolutions while themselves not fulfilling their own obligations are disingenuous and politically and legally cannot hold water. And that is why we do not acknowledge the complaint presented by Berlin, London, and Paris, a complaint to the Council under the meaning of the Resolution 2231. In this regard, therefore, we see no need for the current presidency to undertake any steps here, including the step to introduce a resolution. We are also puzzled by the fact that it was so speedily presented by the South Korean presidency, despite the fact that we have more than a week before the 30 days elapse. And we regret the fact that the Republic of Korea decided to play along with Western destructive approaches, and this is at the expense of their own duties to be an impartial president. Overall, what is happening today gives us the feeling that we're witnessing a clumsy performance aimed at creating a fake parallel reality, which has nothing to do with the political or legal foundations for the work of the Security Council. It's not a secret for anyone that the UK, France, and Germany have no concern at all about the fate of the JCPOA or the authority of the Security Council. Their only goal now is to use the Council as a tool for their bad faith play, as a lever to exert pressure on a state out of favor, a state which is trying to defend its sovereign interests. And here you have a very good illustration of the fact that our European colleagues do, in essence, reject diplomacy. They prefer the language of blackmail and intimidation. Last week, in Vienna, we officially proposed that we held a meeting of all initial participants of the JCPOA so as to have a family, as it were, discussion of the way we can get out of the current crisis. The UK, France, Germany, and the United States' reaction to that was a rejection of our proposal. And therefore, under other circumstances, we wouldn't have participated in the current shameful performance in the Security Council. We wouldn't have participated in that. And the reason we're doing that today only because the content of the document tabled provides for the keeping of the regime of lifting sanctions against Iran, and this is in line with our own long-standing principled position. This does not, however, give an iota of legitimacy to either the European statements about launching snapback or the actions undertaken by the presidency undertaken in the development of this idea. And I would like to ask that this be reflected in the record of this meeting.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. President, at the moment, there are major discrepancies concerning the invocation of the snapback mechanism among all parties within the Council, including whether E3 have the right to invoke the snapback mechanism. China maintains that under such circumstances, hastily pushing for a vote on the draft resolution might exacerbate confrontation further, unconducive for the resolution of the issue. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. I want to be clear that the United Kingdom considers the argument just made by the Russian Federation to be entirely without merit. As the foreign ministers of France, Germany, and my own country, the United Kingdom, have set out, our decision to snap back is entirely legal, justified, and consistent with the requirements of Resolution 2231. According to Resolution 2231, all that is required to trigger snapback is, I quote, a notification by a JCPOA participant state of an issue that the JCPOA participant believes constitutes significant non-performance of commitments under the JCPOA. It is a plain fact that the E3 made this notification on the 28th of August and that snapback has therefore been triggered. We therefore look forward to proceeding to the vote on the draft resolution. I thank you.
I thank the representative of United Kingdom for the statement. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. Members of the Council have before them document S/2025/561, the text of a draft resolution submitted by the President of the Security Council. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote on the draft resolution before it. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements before the vote. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I welcome the presence of the representative of Iran to the meeting. I'd like to thank the presidency for having organized this meeting today on a central issue for international peace and security and for non-proliferation. The organization of this holding of this meeting, enables us to apply, as we should, the JCPOA agreement and Resolution 2231. For France, the conditions are not in place for a permanent lifting of the sanctions adopted by the Security Council with regard to Iran before 2015. Since 2019, Iran has chosen to stop implementing its commitments under the JCPOA and has engaged in an escalation of its nuclear program. This escalation, documented by successive reports of the IAEA, has led Iran to exceed one by one all of the limits that were established in the 2015 agreement. Iran has therefore accumulated a stock of enriched uranium 40 times higher than the 300 kilo limit that was contained in the 2015 agreement. More than 450 kilos at over 60%, whereas the 2015 agreement gave an enrichment limit of 3.76%. 40 times higher. Once again, the limit of enrichment has been exceeded over 60%. The 450 kilos, if it reached military enrichment levels, would make it possible to produce 10 nuclear warheads. The IAEA has underscored in its report that Iran is the only state that does not have a nuclear weapon to have enriched to these kinds of levels. These kinds of activities have no credible justification if it were to be part of a civil program. Once again, it's the IAEA saying that as an independent professional body. Iran has also, for several years now, imposed restrictions on the IAEA verification mechanisms. And the agency has indicated that it has now lost continuity of knowledge with regard to huge aspects of the Iranian nuclear program. Since then, France and our E3 colleagues have applied the JCPOA in good faith with regard to all chapters of the agreement, and we have deployed constant efforts to arrive at a diplomatic solution. In January 2023, we activated the dispute mechanism that is contained in the agreement to try to address the non-respect by Iran of its obligations. In 2021 and 2022, we concluded those efforts. We led intensive negotiations then with a view to bringing Iran round to respecting its arrangements. Two viable proposals were put forward by the JCPOA coordinator in 2022, March and April of that year, and each time Iran refused these offers. Since September 2024, France and our E3 partners have clearly signified to Iran our determination to launch the snapback mechanism before the expiry next October of the mechanism, taking into account the non-proliferation regime and our interests. It's clear that the escalation is continuing with the Iranian nuclear program. It's threatening regional stability, international peace and security, and it's also endangering the integrity of the international non-proliferation regime. Under those conditions, the Security Council would not be assuming its responsibilities if we were to approve the permanent lifting of all sanctions, and if we were to not once and for all deal with the Iranian, and if we were to remove the Iranian nuclear issue from the Council's agenda. But we have tried to find alternatives to reintroducing the snapback and sanctions. Last January, France did not participate in or support the strikes against the Iranian nuclear program. We, on the contrary, highlighted the importance of a diplomatic framework, and that is the only way to lead to a durable pause in the Iranian nuclear program. We also noted that we could not reach a negotiated agreement before the end of the summer, and we ourselves, the E3, tabled an offer to temporarily extend 2231 in order to provide time for diplomacy. That was in July. That offer had a couple of reasonable demands attached to it, covering Iran's obligations under its general guarantees agreement that were reasonable and achievable. They were calibrated and could have been technically achieved in the time frame. First of all, resumed effective cooperation and not just formal cooperation with the IAEA on the ground, and access for inspectors to the Iranian nuclear sites, particularly the most sensitive ones. Natanz Fordaman Isparan. Secondly, the production of specific reports under the generalized security guarantees with regard to uranium, highly enriched uranium in Iran, and thirdly, the resumption of direct unconditional talks with the United States. An extension of Resolution 2231 can only be provided if it is accompanied by Iran meeting its obligations under the general guarantees and if it allows for substantial negotiations to achieve a robust, verifiable agreement with regard to its nuclear program. Since the snapback procedure was launched, we have unrelentingly pursued our efforts to find a negotiated solution within the 30 days before the effective resumption of UN sanctions. Foreign affairs ministers of the E3 have twice met with their Iranian counterpart. The last meeting was the day before yesterday. However, our offer of extension has still not received a satisfactory response. Iran has not taken any actions to resume cooperation with the agency. On the 9th of September in Cairo, there was a meeting between Iran and with Iran with regard to the resumption of cooperation. No timetable was produced, and according to the Iranian foreign minister, the return of inspectors to the most sensitive Iranian sites, such as the ones I mentioned, should be subject to subsequent negotiations with the agency, they said. The IAEA is not able to guarantee the presence of the stock of the 450 kilograms of highly enriched uranium. The last report of the 4th of September, however, qualifies that stock as extremely concerning and stresses the need to verify the situation and resume negotiations with the United States. We don't think that has happened yet. So we have to continue with the snapback procedure, which, unless there is a contrary decision taken by the Council subsequently, on the 28th of September to resume the sanctions regime with regard to Iran as per the 2015 agreement. President, and I will conclude with this, asking the members of the Council to excuse me speaking at such length, but the objections I think raised do merit this. Our commitment for a diplomatic solution remains complete. The E3 ministers who met the day before yesterday, as I was saying, who met with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Iran, told him once again, as clearly as they could, that we have an offer of extension that remains on the table until the end of the 30-day period, and our hand remains outstretched to find a negotiated solution. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2025/561 please raise their hand? Those against? Abstentions? The result of the voting is as follows: 4 votes in favor, 9 votes against, 2 abstentions. The draft resolution has not been adopted, having failed to obtain the required number of votes. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements after the vote. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. I also welcome the participation of the Iranian permanent representative in this meeting. Today's resolution fulfills a key step of the snapback process set out in Security Council Resolution 2231. President, the United Kingdom is committed to pursuing a diplomatic solution to ensure that Iran shall never seek, acquire, or develop a nuclear weapon. That is why, on the 28th of August, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany notified this Council of Iran's clear and deliberate non-compliance with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. We have urged Iran to address international concerns regarding its nuclear program, which the International Atomic Energy Agency has been unable to confirm is exclusively peaceful. Iran's nuclear escalation has been detailed in more than 60 reports by the IAEA over 6 years. It includes the accumulation of a high-enriched uranium stockpile which lacks any credible civilian justification and is unprecedented for a state without a nuclear weapons program. President, the United Kingdom voted no on today's resolution because, if it were adopted, it would have permanently terminated 6 Council resolutions on Iran's nuclear program, removing this important issue from the Council's agenda, despite Iran's JCPOA non-compliance and Iran's continuing failure to implement its legal obligations under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. President, in good faith, we offered Iran an opportunity to extend the provisions of Resolution 2231 if Iran resumed full cooperation with the IAEA in line with its legal obligations, addressed concerns regarding its high-enriched uranium stockpile, and re-engaged seriously in negotiations. These steps are achievable for Iran. They're also justified and proportionate. They would give reassurance to this Council that a full diplomatic deal would follow. But without these most basic conditions being met, there is no clear path to a swift diplomatic solution. We regret that Iran has so far failed to take these steps, and we urge them to act now. President, the United Kingdom remains committed to a diplomatic solution. We are ready for further engagements diplomatically in the next week and beyond to seek to resolve differences. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also welcome Permanent Representative of Iran to the Chamber. I wish to begin by expressing my appreciation to you for your leadership on this file and for your commitment to upholding the agreements reached among the members of the Council. We view today's motion precisely in that spirit, consistent with what the Security Council envisaged when adopting Resolution 2231. Colleagues, we stand at a critical juncture for multilateralism. Trust is eroding in the corridors of the United Nations. International law is increasingly disregarded. 10 years ago, in 2015, global diplomacy was able to overcome differences and find a consensus. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was rightly seen as a landmark multilateral achievement. It placed strict, among participants mutually agreed, limits on Iran's uranium enrichment and stockpile. It established the most rigorous inspection regime ever agreed through the IAEA. Since 2018, the deal has struggled for credibility. For many years, we have been witnessing non-compliance with the provisions of the JCPOA. Prospects were further diminished with the 12 days war in June. Mr. President, Slovenia voted against in today's vote to send a clear and deliberate message a reset is urgently needed. We call on Iran to return to the negotiating table, to restore full cooperation with the IAEA, and to recommit to pursuing its nuclear program solely for peaceful purposes, in a transparent and verifiable way. We call on Iran and on the E3 to use the remaining days to 27 of September for diplomacy. There is no other but a diplomatic solution to Iranian nuclear issue. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to welcome the participation of the Iranian representative to this meeting. Somalia voted this draft resolution according to the paragraph 11 of the Security Council resolution of 2231 of 2015. This decision reflects the nuanced and multifaceted nature of the current situation, particularly regarding the JCPOA commitment by parties. At the same time, we firmly believe that the importance of fostering diplomatic engagement and dialogue to address Iran's nuclear program. Any decision regarding Iran's nuclear program must be considered carefully, taking into account the broader implication of the regional stability and international security. We urge all parties to work constructively in the coming days, prioritizing diplomatic solutions that address the concerns at hand while avoiding actions that could lead to further escalation. In conclusion, Somalia reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the nuclear weapon-free Middle East and a peaceful use of nuclear energy, in full alignment with Article 4 of the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we have already voiced our positions of principle. We reject both the attempts on the part of the European states to attempt to trigger the snapback and the presidency action in support of it, including the introduction of this resolution, and our position remains unchanged. The fact that Russia voted in favor of the draft should not be interpreted as a change in our position. We supported the draft for one reason only. Its sole operative paragraph preserves the lifting of UN sanctions on Iran. And this is the only correct, politically and legally justified decision. And we have consistently spoken about the fact that there is no alternative for it, and said so over the years. The logic of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action envisioned a gradual lifting of all restrictions on Iran, and we firmly believe that there is no reason why they should not expire on October 18th this year. The law, the letter, and the spirit of JCPOA, diplomatic norms, and common sense all indicate that pressuring a sovereign state through political blackmail and brute military force, and we all saw how Iran became a victim of aggressive actions by Israel and the US in June of this year, and then trying to further squeeze it with UN sanctions, so that this is immoral, that this is not constructive and illegal. But this is exactly what our Western colleagues are attempting to do now. And let me remind you here that everything, including Iran's cooperation with IAEA, was proceeding as planned until the time when the US in 2018 decided to follow a destructive path and officially withdrew from the deal. And that was the trigger for the JCPOA crisis. And the consequences of that crisis is what the Council now has to deal with. But the Western delegations are very conveniently ignoring this fact. Despite the unlawful and aggressive actions by Washington, Tehran at the time showed restraint, and for more than an hour, let me emphasize this, more than an hour, continued to honor its commitment in good faith. It was only after a renewed pressure did Iran undertake reciprocal steps, whilst consistently noting that these actions were reversible. Unfortunately, our European colleagues even then were not interested in returning to diplomacy and did not follow the path of meaningful dialogue, for which there was a chance in 2022 when the parameters for restoring JCPOA were being discussed. The violations by the UK, France, and Germany of their obligations under the Resolution 2231 and JCPOA have become chronic a long time ago. And I am referring here to their failure to uphold their obligations to ensure that there were economic benefits to Iran from the lifting of EU sanctions and their illegal decision to resume unilateral sanctions after the JCPOA's transition day on October 18, 2023. My country has repeatedly informed the Security Council members of its position when we stated that the UK, France, and Germany have no right to invoke the snapback mechanism against Iran under paragraph 11, operative 11 of Resolution 2231. A party that fails to uphold its own obligations under an agreement or treaty forfeits the right to use the mechanisms in that agreement or treaty. And this is something that's clearly stated in the Clean Hands Doctrine, the principle of Pacta Sunt Servanda, and the advisory opinion issued by the International Court of Justice. Against this background, the so-called notification from the European Three on the snapback triggering disseminated in the Council on August 28 has no legal or procedural validity. It cannot serve as a basis for any Security Council decisions or actions. And this position is detailed in the joint letter from the foreign ministers of Russia, China, and Iran, which was circulated in the Council on August 28. And let me emphasize here once again, from our perspective, no snapback procedure has been initiated. The draft resolution considered today is a direct violation of Resolution 2231 and the JCPOA, which is its integral part. And it is for this reason Russia does not recognize any committed or any future steps in this context. I remind you here that the real alternative to the current lawlessness within the Security Council chamber exists, and it is the Russia-China draft resolution, which is currently in blue, and which proposes a technical extension of Resolution 2231 for 6 months, and at the same time calls on all original JCPOA participants to immediately resume negotiations so as to find diplomatic solutions. And we urge all reasonable Council members to support this when we put this to a vote. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
主席，中方支持继续解除安理会对伊制裁措施，对。
President, China supports the Security Council sanctions against Iran remaining terminated and has voted yes on the draft resolution. At the same time, I must emphasize we firmly reject relevant countries' push by force for the invocation of the snapback mechanism and hold such a move as gravely undermining diplomatic efforts for a political resolution of the Iran nuclear issue. President, the current difficult situation concerning the Iran nuclear issue stems from the United States' unilateral withdrawal from and undermining the proper implementation of the JCPOA, reinstalling and continuously escalating its sanctions against Iran, imposing maximum pressure, which deprived Iran of its access to the economic dividends provided for under the deal, and left Iran with no choice but to scale back its compliance with the agreement. The U.S., at the expense of its own credibility, went even further by recklessly launching military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, thereby torpedoing the very negotiation process that the U.S. itself initiated. It is under these circumstances that the UK, France, and Germany are citing Resolution 2231 and insisting on activating the snapback mechanism to unilaterally sanction Iran. This is unfair and unreasonable. Such a move causes tension and division among Council members, is not conducive to rebuilding mutual trust and bridging differences among the parties, detrimental to the diplomatic effort towards early resumption of talks, and may even bring about catastrophic consequences that are impossible to foresee and forfeit years of diplomatic efforts in one stroke. China has grave concern over this. President, China always maintains that a political and diplomatic solution represents the only viable option to resolve the Iran nuclear issue and the right path to lasting peace. This is also the prevailing view within the international community. In the current situation, we call on the parties to stay calm and exercise restraint, resolve issues through diplomacy and dialogue, and avoid falling back into the vicious cycle of sanctions, pressure, and escalating tensions. I wish to emphasize the following points. First, Iran's efforts should be acknowledged and sanctions and pressurization halted. For some time now, Iran has repeatedly reaffirmed the peaceful nature of its nuclear program and emphasized it has no intention to develop nuclear weapons. It has overcome multiple challenges since it sustained military strikes by Israel and the US to resume cooperation with the IAEA. Iran has sent positive signals many times, expressing its willingness to resume talks with the US. The E3 should view this positive initiative objectively and immediately withdraw their notifications to snap back sanctions against Iran. Second, we must maintain dialogue and negotiation and abandon threats of force. The use of force is not the right way to resolve international disputes, nor can it resolve the Iran nuclear issue. The US ought to reflect on the disruptive impact of its withdrawal from the JCPOA and its military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, give a positive response to Iran's call for resumption of dialogue, undertake not to resort to the use of force again, unconditionally resume dialogue and negotiation with Iran without delay, and resolve differences and respective concerns during negotiations. Third, we should focus on a political solution and create favorable conditions to that end. The Security Council should play a constructive role in assisting the parties concerned to build trust, bridge differences, and advance the political process to negotiate a new agreement. China, together with Russia, issued a draft resolution on the technical extension of Resolution 2231 for the purpose of buying time for diplomacy and creating conditions for a political solution, so as to prevent an irrecoverable tailspin that pushes the situation over the edge. This draft resolution remains on the table, and we encourage the parties to give it serious consideration. Fourth, we should uphold objectivity and impartiality and properly resolve differences. In the next steps of the political settlement process, relevant goals and measures of the JCPOA and Resolution 2231 remain valid. The objectives of nuclear non-proliferation and a peaceful use of nuclear energy must be balanced. Iran should continue to honor its commitment not to develop nuclear weapons, and other parties should fully respect Iran's right to the peaceful use of nuclear energy as a state party to the NPT. On the basis of mutual respect and equal dialogue, we must identify the greatest common denominator that accommodates the legitimate concerns of all parties, reach a solution that meets the expectations of the international community, and place Iran's nuclear activities entirely under the safeguards of the IAEA. President, As a participant to the JCPOA and a permanent member of the Security Council, China remains committed to a political solution of the Iran nuclear issue and to security and stability in the Middle East. China will continue to maintain an objective position, work hard to promote peace talks, and play a constructive role in advancing the political process to settle the Iran nuclear issue. Thank you, President.
Representative of China for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. The United States thanks the presidency for submitting this resolution consistent with the presidency's obligation under OP 11 of Resolution 2231. On August 28th, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, the E3, each notified the Council of Iran's significant and continuing non-performance of its nuclear commitments. Their case was clear. Iran has enriched uranium well above the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, limits in a manner for which there is no credible civilian purpose. As we speak, Iran continues to not implement the IAEA's JCPOA monitoring measures and to not provisionally apply the IAEA additional protocol. The E3 could have initiated the snapback process as early as 2019. Instead, they chose to first pursue intensive diplomacy with Iran. Then, in July, the E3 offered to extend the snapback mechanism if Iran were to take steps to address concerns regarding its highly enriched uranium stockpile, comply with its IAEA obligations, and resume direct diplomacy with the United States. Despite suggestions to the contrary from Iran and others, Tehran has not yet realized those conditions. The United States therefore voted no on this resolution, and we are pleased that this resolution was not adopted due to not receiving the requisite number of yes votes. The practical effect of this vote is that absent any further action by the Council, the pre-2015 UN sanctions on Iran are reimposed following the end of the 30-day snapback period on September 27th. However, to be absolutely clear, our vote on this resolution does not impede the possibility of real diplomacy, despite any statements to the contrary. The UN provisions to be reimposed are not arbitrary, but instead narrowly scoped to address the threat posed by Iran's nuclear, missile, and conventional arms programs and support for terrorism. Their return does not preclude later removal through diplomacy. More importantly, President Trump has continued to reiterate the United States' ongoing readiness for a meaningful, direct, and time-bound dialogue with Iran, be it prior to the conclusion of the snapback process on September 27th or after. Absent a deal, it is incumbent on the international community to not accept Iranian half measures or efforts to delay accountability. We must, with one voice, press leadership in Iran to choose the path of peace and, by extension, prosperity for the Iranian people. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. President, and we welcome the participation of the permanent representative of Iran in this meeting. Mr. President, Guyana has consistently maintained support for dialogue and diplomacy as the most viable option for addressing all concerns related to the Iranian nuclear issue. Indeed, it was through dialogue and diplomacy that China, France, Germany, Russia, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Iran reached the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which this Council endorsed through Resolution 2231. Guyana recalls that Resolution 2231 affirmed that the full implementation of the JCPOA would contribute to building confidence in the exclusively peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. It also emphasized that the JCPOA is conducive to promoting and facilitating the development of normal economic and trade relations and cooperation with Iran. Guyana therefore expresses its regret that to date the plan has not been successfully implemented and consequently the goals of the JCPOA have not been achieved. Ahead of the expiration of Resolution 2231, Guyana urges the participants of the JCPOA to honor their commitments of resuming negotiations in good faith and to do so without further delay. We reiterate our support for the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2231 and the JCPOA and commit to working with Council members for a swift resolution to the Iranian nuclear issue. We further express our disappointment that despite their stated commitment to dialogue, the parties have not been able to resolve their differences in a manner that addresses the fundamental issues and the security concerns of all involved. We believe that dialogue should always be the first recourse to resolving any dispute or challenge between or among states. In this particular context, we are resolute that dialogue should involve all participants to the JCPOA. Guyana's abstention must be seen in this light. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And at the outset, let me thank you, the Presidency, for presenting this draft resolution in line with the procedures described in Resolution 2231. I also wish to welcome the participation of the Permanent Representative of Iran to this meeting. Mr. President, 10 years ago, a landmark diplomatic achievement was realized. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, demonstrated what is possible when political differences are set aside, when the international community unites in common cause. Regrettably, it has become clear that Iran has been in significant non-compliance with its commitments under the agreement for most of the past decade. This has been documented in more than 60 reports by the IAEA. On this backdrop, we are extremely worried about the fact that the Iranian nuclear program, with its accumulation of highly enriched uranium stockpiles, lacks any credible civilian justification and is unprecedented for a state without a nuclear weapons program. The suspension of the sanctions regime on Iran in 2015 was a key element of the JCPOA. As a European country, Denmark witnessed and supported the extraordinary efforts that the EU and European countries put into its negotiation and its implementation. We did so guided by a firm belief in the power of diplomacy. Today, that belief remains. Mr. President, the E3 have remained steadfast in their commitment to resolve the dispute with Iran without having to impose sanctions. Iran has been offered many opportunities to engage constructively to avoid the situation we're in today. Most recently, Iran has had nearly 2 months to address E3's immediate concerns that we fully share. Regrettably, Iran has decided not to do so. Our overarching objective is clear: to ensure that Iran will never acquire a nuclear weapon. Despite our differences, we are all united by this common goal. For this reason, Denmark decided to vote no to this resolution. Denmark supports the activation of the snapback as a consequence of Iran's actions and non-compliance with the JCPOA. In closing, Denmark remains fully committed to a diplomatic solution to the Iran nuclear issue. We encourage Iran to accept the conditions set by the E3 and urge Iran to return to the negotiating table in good faith. Our belief in diplomacy remains. We remain committed to reach a negotiated solution to the Iran nuclear issue. This vote does not close the door to diplomacy, it opens the door for diplomacy. There is still time for Iran to change its nuclear course. We strongly urge Iran to do so. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the presidency for tabling this draft resolution in line with paragraph 11 of Resolution 2231. We welcome the participation of the representative of Iran in this meeting. Sierra Leone notes the geopolitical context within which the Council has been called upon to discharge its charter responsibilities of maintaining international peace and security and addressing threats thereto. We are mindful of the provisions of the Charter and international law that provide for lawful redress for internationally wrongful acts of states, including in this current broader context. On Resolution 2231, our position is principled and consistent. We uphold the integrity of the global non-proliferation regime. We favor the peaceful settlement of disputes through political and diplomatic dialogue. We call on all parties to act with restraint, uphold Resolution 2231, and support a credible path back to compliance. All JCPA stakeholders should therefore take concrete and verifiable steps. We also invite all stakeholders to take measured and reciprocal steps that preserve the space for diplomacy and respond to verified compliance. We share the concerns expressed during consultations that moving ahead without restoring verification and clarity will not strengthen compliance. The Presidency's text would have decided that the terminations under Resolution 2231 remain in effect at a time of increasing questions and allegations over transparency and reported verification gaps. It sets no immediate path to restore monitoring, lower enrichment, or rebuild continuity of knowledge, nor does it address differing views among participant states on how procedures under Resolution 2231, including paragraph 11, should operate. Sierra Leone thus voted against this resolution because it was clear that it would not attract the support of the vast majority of Council members and did not provide a basis for achieving consensus. It would therefore not have contributed to improving security and stability in the region. It could have also narrowed the space for diplomacy by weakening incentives for verified steps towards compliance. Nevertheless, we stand ready to work with Council members and JCPOA participants to craft a balanced way forward that can command broad support. Early steps should include full IAEA access, practical transparency measures, and a clear plan to bring the program within verifiable limits, while establishing the right of Iran to pursue a nuclear program solely for peaceful purposes. Work should proceed through the Joint Commission, including use of the dispute resolution mechanism where appropriate, with timelines and deliverables reporting to Council. Mr. President, Sierra Leone supports the view that diplomacy is the way forward in this context. However, it should be tied to verifiable action and lead to tangible outcomes and good faith engagement. The priority now is to use the available period to restore compliance and reduce risk. Sierra Leone stands ready to engage with all members to facilitate this agreement while maintaining the authority of the Council. We will assess any new text by whether it strengthens verification, preserves space for diplomacy, and improves regional security. Our objective is clear: a lawful, proportionate, and diplomatic path that sustains the global non-proliferation regime, restores effective verification, and contributes to regional stability. we will continue to support balanced and constructive efforts that brings all parties back into compliance and strengthen international peace and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. Algeria voted in favor of the draft resolution to lift sanctions imposed on Iran, tabled by the Republic of Korea as the President of the Security Council for the month of September. The crucial principles that we have based ourselves in our vote are clear and principled. First, the position expressed today is deeply rooted in international law and is guided by our principled and firm commitment to the peaceful settlement of disputes as a cornerstone of the UN Charter and a landmark of our foreign policy. In fact, any alternative to the peaceful settlement of the Iranian nuclear dossier includes major risks and threats and devastating consequences for the Middle East region and to international peace and security. In this critical juncture, the Security Council should remain focused on the maintenance of international peace of security, making it its top priority. 2. Based on the aforementioned, we have a firm conviction that implementing additional restrictions currently would be counterproductive and would include risks of escalation that could undermine diplomatic efforts. Hence, we welcome the recent agreement signed between Iran and the IAEA as a positive step towards resuming cooperation and honoring commitments and giving momentum that there is a dire need for in diplomatic efforts. We must stress that there is no military solution for the Iranian nuclear file. The only implementable path is the diplomatic path and the path of negotiation and dialogue. Hence, we must give a real opportunity for diplomacy through providing enough time for peaceful and political pursuits. This leads me to my third and last point, namely, as members of the Security Council and responsible members of the international community, we must create an enabling environment for diplomacy to succeed. The current consensus among the participants of the GCPOA and the members of the Council for the need for diplomatic solution imposes upon us the need to work tirelessly to build on this common foundation with a view to overcoming procedural obstacles and to bring opinions closer to reach the desired goal and solution. Our vote today is in line with our convictions, supported by UN reports and the report of the Secretary General of the UN that the policy of imposing sanctions is always derailing from the precautionary and preemptive goal and would have consequences on civilians. And our vote is also in line with our position that everyone needs to seriously engage and in good faith in negotiations for an agreement in the near future to reactivate the lifting of sanctions procedures. For all the above reasons, we have voted in favor of the draft resolution. In closing, we call upon all parties to exercise utmost restraint and to avoid any escalatory measures and to engage in negotiations to reach a comprehensive, long-term and suitable solution that this dossier warrants. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pakistan voted in favor of the draft resolution. Our position on this matter has been guided by the following. First, the firm belief that all issues concerning Iran's nuclear program must be resolved by peaceful means through dialogue and cooperation. Second, the need to provide more time for diplomacy to succeed. Third, the imperative of avoiding a confrontation that could further complicate the situation. And fourth, preserve the framework of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and Resolution 2231 for reaching an amicable solution without a resort to coercive measures till such time that a successor arrangement or a new deal is reached. The JCPOA was a sterling example of a pragmatic and cooperative approach which charted a negotiated roadmap to comprehensively address the concerns of all parties by clearly defining their relevant obligations and responsibilities. Regrettably, the agreement was disrupted, leaving many complications in its wake that impacted the full and faithful implementation of the JCPOA by various parties and leading to mutual recriminations. Mr. President, the agreement on practical modalities for the implementation of safeguards in Iran, signed by Iran's Foreign Minister and IAEA Director General in Cairo on 9th of September, aimed at restarting agency's verification activities and inspections, was a positive development. The DG IAEA termed it, and I quote, an important step in the right direction. There is a need to build on this breakthrough to restore mutual trust and promote confidence between all the relevant parties that was seriously eroded due to the recent developments. Invoking the snapback and reimposition of UN sanctions could further complicate the situation, harden positions, and take us away from the objective of an amicable resolution of the issue. The current situation demanded more engagement and not a hasty reimposition of sanctions. That is why Pakistan favored a technical extension of Resolution 2231 for a period of 6 months to create space for political engagement and negotiations through a realistic and constructive approach by all the parties. We regret being put in a situation that confronts us today to vote on a clearly divisive matter when other avenues were available to avoid it, when other pathways could have been utilized to address the concerns harmoniously and cordially, allowing the Council to proceed with consensus, as it did with the adoption of Resolution 2231 10 years ago. President, as an immediate neighbor and friend of Iran, we do not favor any action which risks destabilizing a region that is already mired in multiple crises. This region cannot afford further tensions. We believe that even at this stage, diplomacy should be given a chance. There is an urgent need to renew and continue diplomatic engagement to seriously and faithfully address any outstanding issues in a cooperative manner in accordance with the rights, obligations, and responsibilities of the parties concerned. We must prioritize this approach and never give up on a peaceful, negotiated settlement. And let me emphasize that diplomacy and intimidation do not go together. Diplomacy has delivered previously, and with the necessary sagacity and pragmatism, it can certainly deliver again. We hope that the path towards a resolution of the underlying issues would not narrow down. In our view, it still remains available, provided there is political will to take it. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We welcome the permanent representative of Iran, his distinguished presence today. The Republic of Panama is committed to international rules-based order, and we recognize that multilateral cooperation is essential to address global challenges and promote peace and security. Our position is based on the key principles of the Panamanian foreign policy, including the strengthening of the global non-proliferation regime, the preservation of the multilateral architecture, and the promotion of diplomatic dialogue as the most effective way to lessen tensions and reduce strategic risks. In this regard, we would respectfully call upon the Islamic Republic of Iran to commit itself fully and constructively to the IAEA and resume its obligations that were previously undertaken. And that's why we reiterate that it is fundamental to ensure access, transparency, and effective monitoring in order to re-establish trust, to ensure that the nature of the program is exclusively for peaceful purposes. And we call upon all the parties involved to give a priority to diplomacy, because it's only through efficient diplomacy and cooperation that we can achieve lasting, sustainable and just security and peace for all. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for scheduling today's vote and for fulfilling your duties as presidency on a critical matter for international peace and security. I welcome the participation of the representative of Iran. I wish to make 3 points. First, to reiterate our concern on the scope and nature of Iran's nuclear program. I think it is something the majority of us agree upon. It is also the reason we voted against. Iran has still not sufficiently responded to these concerns. IAEA inspections, as provided in the JCPOA, have not resumed, and information on the stockpile of the highly enriched uranium has not been provided. Let me add that recent steps taken by Iran are welcome and a positive statement of intentions, but need to be followed by tangible commitments. Now is the time for meaningful engagement and a return to negotiations. Second, let me stress, therefore, that this vote does not mark the end of the road. Instead, it should be a departure point to redouble our efforts towards diplomatically resolving the issue and upholding the global non-proliferation architecture. Thirdly, Mr. President, with the high-level week coming up and with all the interested parties in the same room, now is the moment to talk and negotiate meaningfully. We believe that dialogue and diplomacy remain the most effective tools in order to arrive at a mutually agreed solution that addresses the concerns of all sides on a critical matter for international peace and security. An agreement is good for all, including Iran. This is not the end of diplomacy, but let us seize the current moment. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the Republic of Korea. 10 years ago, intense negotiations between the P5, Germany, Iran, and the European Union culminated in the unanimous adoption of the Security Council Resolution 2231. which laid out a path to a peaceful and diplomatic solution to the Iranian nuclear issue. The resolution envisioned a future where Iran would continue its civil nuclear program for peaceful purpose under strict adherence to IAEA safeguards, while the Security Council lifted sanctions and restrictive measures against Iran in a phased manner until 2025. As the Council President for the month of September, the Republic of Korea has made the best of its effort to ensure that the Council's work would be conducted in accordance with Resolution 2231. Accordingly, we held today's vote as it was designed when Resolution 2231 was adopted to secure its full compliance. Today's outcome is not the best future that Resolution 2231 envisioned. However, nothing is over yet, and there is still hope. The Republic of Korea would like to emphasize that now is precisely the time for intense diplomacy to achieve a peaceful and diplomatic solution of the Iranian nuclear issue. Resolution 2231, which has been our anchor for the past decades, is still there, and there is a chance to preserve the core tenet of the resolution and arrive at a better outcome in the future. Amid the eternal continuum of diplomatic efforts toward peace and security, the Republic of Korea, as the President of the Council, abstained from voting in hope for and encouragement of further diplomacy. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, Mr. President, at the outset, allow me to express deep appreciation to Algeria, China, Pakistan, and Russia, who have rejected the politics of coercion and upheld the principles of diplomacy, justice, and law. We also commend Guyana for its courage in resisting coercion. Their vote today showed true commitment to diplomacy. Their position today sends a clear message. Conflict must be resolved through dialogue, not through the blunt instrument of pressure and intimidation. They have chosen to stand on the right side of history. Mr. President, Iran's position is clear and consistent. Resolution 2231 must be implemented exactly as agreed. These timelines are not suggestions, they are binding commitment. Painstakingly negotiated and unanimously endorsed by this Council. Any attempt by E3 to reimpose sanctions already terminated is not only baseless, but a direct assault on international law and credibility of the Security Council itself. Resolution 2231 and the JCPOA were hard-won achievements after more than a decade of negotiations. They settled all concerns about Iran's nuclear program, confirming its exclusively peaceful character. Iran implemented the deal in full and in good faith. No other nation has ever subjected itself to such rigorous, intrusive verification by IAEA. We kept our words. The EU, E3, and US did not. It was the United States that unilaterally tore up the agreement in 2018, imposing sanctions in open defiance of this Council. It was the E3 that failed to meet their obligation, hiding behind empty promises while quietly following Washington's lead and instructions. And now, in a striking display of hypocrisy, they claim that Iran must be punished for measures we took only after years of enduring their violations. Mr. President, we categorically reject the E3 notification of 28 August 2025. It is procedurally invalid, politically motivated, and legally void. By bypassing the CPOA dispute resolution mechanism, the E3 have shredded the very framework they claim to defend. Worse still, parties lying in material breach cannot suddenly present themselves as guardians of compliance. This is not legal or law. It is opportunism camouflaged as legality. Iran's remedial measures were neither reckless nor unilateral. They were calibrated, transparent, and fully consistent with our right under the JCPOA. To twist these lawful actions into a pretext for a snapback is to reward violators and punish compliant. Mr. President, this traversely unfold against the backdrop of blatant aggression. Iran's safeguard nuclear facilities have been attacked, not in secret, but openly by Israel, a rogue regime, and by the United States, a depository of NPT. Facilitates under IAEA monitoring were bombed in violation of every principle of international law and the very foundation of the non-proliferation regime. And yet, instead of condemnation, we witness silence, worse, justification from the very state now lecturing Iran about obligations. What clearer evidence of double standard and hypocritical behavior could there be? Despite this, Iran did not abandon diplomacy. On 9 September in Cairo, we reached an understanding with IAEA to resume cooperation, a significant and forward-looking step, but rather than seizing this opportunity, the US and E3 dismissed it, exposing the gulf between their rhetoric and their true intentions. They speak of dialogue with strangling it. They proclaim support for diplomacy while burying it under threats. This reckless step undermines dialogue, rewards aggressions, and sets a dangerous precedent. Mr. President, E3 and the US, in coordination with Israel, are spreading false claims that Iran's nuclear program threatens peace and security. This is a fabrication. Iran has not breached the JCPOA, the NPT, or its safeguard obligations. Our nuclear program remains entirely peaceful. Even the impartiality of this Council has been compromised. The Presidency, under pressure from certain permanent members, ignored the requirement to take into account the views of all participants, including Iran, Russia, and China, before presenting today's draft resolution. This requirement is explicitly stated in paragraph 11, Resolution 2231, and even in the President's draft. Yet, in practice, the President of the Council disregarded this language, violated the neutrality of the Council, and effectively endorsed the E3 notification by both introducing the draft and calling for a vote, without ensuring that the positions of China, Iran, and Russia are true participants of JCPOA were fully reflected. This is not consensus building. It was coercion. The result is decision imposed on Council, not owned by it. In conclusion, Mr. President, I wish to state Iran's firm position. 1. Today's action is hastily, unnecessary, and unlawful. Iran recognizes no obligation to implement it. 2. The responsibility for its grave consequences lies squarely with the United States and the E3, who fabricated allegations against Iran while enabling Israeli criminal attacks on safeguard facilities. 3. This act, with no consensus, weakened the Council. undermines diplomacy and jeopardizes the non-proliferation regime. Fourth, Iran's nuclear program will not be destroyed by bombs, halted by sanctions, or diverted from its peaceful path. The door for diplomacy is not closed, but it will be Iran, not the adversaries, who decides with whom and on what basis to engage. Mr. President, today's Council has squandered an opportunity for dialogue and consensus. Russia and China, acting in good faith, tabled a balanced initiative to extend Resolution 2231 and preserve diplomacy. Instead of embracing this path of reason, the United States and the E3 choose an escalation, pressure, and division. This contradiction between their rhetoric and actions prove once more their real intention is not diplomacy, but escalation. They must now bear full responsibility for the crisis they have manufactured. Let there be no doubt, Iran will remain steadfast in defending its sovereignty, its rights, and the peaceful character of its nuclear program. We will not yield to coercion. We will not be intimidated by unlawful threats, and we will not allow this Council to be misused as an instrument of injustice. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers.